that we're going to be good everywhere this week. Certainly seems like we're now live on LinkedIn and YouTube, and I think Twitter will follow shortly as soon as it gets its act together. So good. All right. Well, welcome to SearchPilot Live. Again, my name is Will Critchlow. I'm founder and CEO here at SearchPilot, and I run these live streams. Try and do them, as I say, try to do them weekly on a Tuesday. I do know it is currently Friday. So normally at about 4:15 p.m. this time in the UK, which is about 11:15 a.m. on the East Coast, 8:15 a.m. on the West Coast. And if you want to follow along in future, best places to find it are my Twitter and my LinkedIn, both at Will Critchlow, as well as the SearchPilot YouTube, which is at SearchPilot on YouTube. You can follow the stream, any of those places, and get notified when I go live. But you can also sign up on the SearchPilot website, and I'll, after this, tweet out and put in the LinkedIn comments all the links of everything I talk about today, which will include not only the information about how to sign up to these live streams, but also a bunch of links. I'm going to be talking about all kinds of stories today, things that I found interesting and things that I think will be of interest to others. And if you want early access to a bunch of stuff, one of the good places to go is searchpilot.com/live, which is links to customer stories from SearchPilot, how SEO testing works, including information you can share with your boss or your team, as well as individual SEO test results, back catalogue of test results, as well as our email list where you can get a new test in your inbox every other week. So hope something there is useful to people. And if you want to actually see the SearchPilot software in action, get a demo, talk about your SEO experimentation program, just fill out this form here at searchpilot.com/live, and you can speak to one of the team here at SearchPilot. So thank you for joining me today. I want to talk today about SEO experimentation in e-commerce. And part of the reason for that, if you follow me anywhere on also SearchPilot, anywhere on social media, you might have seen that we're celebrating a big customer win. And it's not always that we get to talk about these, but in this particular case, we are able to. Very excited to be able to announce that SearchPilot is working with Marks & Spencer to power their SEO part of their experimentation program. And I'm kind of assuming that folks in the US as well know about Marks & Spencer. It's one of the most iconic British brands, big retailer, multi-billion pound, I guess I should say, business. And we're really excited to be partnering in this way. And as I say, we don't always get to shout about these things, but in this particular case, we are able to. And you can head on over to searchpilot.com and see the announcement on our, there's an article up there about it. But just some nice things that we've heard. So Olivia lives the head of digital marketing delivery at M&S and has been talking about the need to incorporate organic search into their testing capabilities. And they've got a very mature SEO testing council and program, and are looking to incorporate search engine optimization more into that. And that's really what's given me the idea for talking in more detail about what I want to talk about today, because it's partly about e-commerce, it's partly about SEO testing, but it's really more about successful experimentation programs. And so what we've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I'm going to share some more detail and data and slides a little bit later on today. But what this is really about is a successful experimentation program is about moving from tactical questions like how to come up with a good test idea or how to analyze a single test towards managing the program. And so that's about things like win rate and test volume and those kind of KPIs, lead metrics that leadership can pay attention to check that things are moving in the right direction. For example, I had a meeting this week with a director level P&L budget holder at a large public company who said, he's a marketing leader, he has a head of SEO reporting to him. And he said, SEO has so many voices and opinions. It's hard to know who to listen to. We've seen flat performance year over year, and we've had a dip in recent Google updates. Business, product, and tech don't necessarily get what the SEO guy is saying. And we need to know how to make the right decisions faster. This is not M&S, by the way, but it relates closely into this question of how to build effective experimentation programs. And our view is that this kind of effective program building is the path to solving those problems. It's the path to solving the problem that there's too many voices, too many opinions, we don't know who to listen to, solving the problem of flat performance and building growth back into a year-over-year performance. And it's about communication and prioritization within the business, so that the business itself, the product and the tech teams can understand what's coming out of SEO, can understand the value, can tie the initiatives and the collaboration work that's necessary to real business outcomes. And fundamentally, it's that last point. We need to know how to make the right decisions faster. And that really, for me, this was, as I said, this wasn't me talking, this was director level P&L budget holder talking about needing to make the right decisions faster. And if I had to encapsulate what an effective experimentation program is in a sentence, I don't think I could do a better job than that. And so I thought I would just share a few things this week from the other week, last week, the week before. My colleague Sam Nemza gave the first part of a webinar. He's giving the second part soon. I'll talk about how you can sign up for these things and how you can get recording and so forth. I'm not going to run through the whole thing, but he gave a presentation on designing an effective SEO experimentation program for greater ROI. Now, Sam, many of you may know Sam Nemza. Sam has been with the team here since before SearchPilot even existed, going back to the distilled days. And you may know that SearchPilot came out of the agency that I helped found almost 20 years ago now, 2005. And Sam's been with the team for many years and has a lot of experience as an SEO consultant, and is now senior consultant and lead onboarding specialist in the SearchPilot professional services team. And what that means is he has more experience than I think anyone in this on-ramp of getting from, okay, we're now able to run a test. We're able to analyze the results of a test. We have a handful of test ideas. How do you go from that to a successful program, to a program where you are running a machine that has a backlog of ideas, a whole pipeline of ideas, so you're filtering in and out the ideas that you want to prioritize. You're able to schedule and plan and prioritize and project manage around all of that, and you're able to manage to the KPIs that the business cares about. And obviously the business ultimately cares about the uplift and the outcomes and the performance revenue, but those are lagging indicators. And so what you actually need to manage to is the key performance indicators, which are typically lead metrics, which, as I said, going back to that, I couldn't necessarily put it any better. How do we make the right decisions faster? And so that is win rate and testing speed. So just a handful of Sam's slides I thought it was worth sharing with everyone today. What is an SEO experimentation program? Well, it's a structured approach to hypothesis-based testing for the organic search channel. So what we mean by that is it's structured. It's not just we run the odd test, or we have run a test, or we're running 3 tests a year. It is, we have a backlog, we have a prioritization process, we have a pipeline, we have measurement metrics for the program, not just for the individual tests. We can pay attention to those KPIs and those leading indicators that play towards the business success that we ultimately want to see. It's hypothesis-based, and this means that we're not just throwing things at the wall. We are testing things that we have some reason to believe, hopefully we have some reason to believe are going to be beneficial to our business, but at the very least we have a reason to believe that we're going to learn something interesting from them. And sometimes, I guess the 3 most common hypotheses, by far the most common hypothesis, is we think this is a good idea. We just think this is going to result in better performance. Reasonably often we see the second kind of hypothesis, which is this is something that somebody in the organization wants to do for whatever reason, and we want to check that it's not a bad idea, or we're fairly neutral in it, but we want to avoid surprises. And and then we also get the kind of learning type hypothesis, which is that we need to know whether this is a good direction to go in, because it's going to guide future initiatives and future future hypotheses ultimately, but crucially effort. We're going to put a whole load of effort into this area if we can get some sense of it being a good idea. And it's for the organic search channel. This is what we specialize in. One of the things, so I talk reasonably often about how, so SearchPilot spun out of Distilled. It is effectively a bootstrapped startup. We're 25 people now, and we are a technology startup, a software as a service SaaS business. And it's not quite my second startup because it spun out of Distilled. It's not completely independent of Distilled. Many of the team, as I say, Sam himself, who gave this presentation, predate SearchPilot, came with the organization, came from the Distilled organization. The COO, CTO, VP of Customer Success, all there for many years prior to the spin out. And so there are certain things about SearchPilot that are holdovers, throwbacks related to the way that we did things at Distilled. But we did get to make a fresh start, especially because we then ran slap bang into COVID, having spun out in January 2020. And so I like to think of myself as like a 1.5 time founder. And what I'm trying to do this time around with SearchPilot is make different mistakes. I think making no mistakes is an unachievable goal, and probably not a sensible goal, because if you make no mistakes, you're not trying enough things, most likely. But one of the things that I'm trying to do much, much better at SearchPilot is stay focused. And Distilled was much less focused. Distilled was SEO consulting, but also conferences, but also Distilled U, but also we ended up building SearchPilot. And we were spread across 8 time zones, 3 offices, etc. SearchPilot is super focused. SearchPilot is just about the organic search channel. So we're very, very focused on SEO. And we're very focused on very large websites. And all of the things I'm talking about here today, right from the beginning with the winning M&S as a customer through to experimentation programs, these are not things that tiny businesses need to pay attention to, right? And even at SearchPilot, we don't have an SEO experimentation program for our own website. The website's simply too small. But if you're e-commerce, your travel, your real estate, your jobs, your listings, your local, your marketplace, and you are making substantial money online, then it is almost guaranteed that organic search is going to be your largest channel. And it's quite likely it's under pressure right now. It's quite likely that what you're seeing is at least turbulence, if not flat or worse, down performance in the light of Google changes, competitor competition heightening, etc. And that's where we're here to help. So we're staying super focused on that quadrant. Every startup has its 2x2. We're at the focused on SEO, focused on large enterprise websites. If that's not you, if you run a small organization, you can still learn from this stuff. But what I think you're most likely to take away from it is things that we have learned in running those big accounts. So that's where it comes into play with, I already mentioned the resources that we have at searchpilot.com/live. If you head to our test results, you can see our back catalogue of tests. And this is the kind of thing that I think if I was running a small website, I would be learning from this stuff. If I'm running a big website, I want to be running those tests for myself. I want this structured approach to hypothesis-based testing for the organic search channel. So as I've said, when you narrow it all down to what are the key performance indicators of an experimentation program, it's about getting the right results faster and right answers faster. And that's basically, are we on track with the number of tests we want to run versus our target? And are we on track with our win rate? This slide from Sam's webinar that just shows some real data from one of our customer accounts showing how on track we are with launching tests over time and how we're doing on our benchmark win rate. So benchmark is what is common around the industry, and the red line here shows the results of this actual account. And this is really what I wanted to talk about today, is these two things as key performance indicators if you're running an enterprise testing program. If you want to know more, so I've just skimmed over what was a whole hour-long webinar from Sam. He's giving part 2 of this soon, and if you head on over to the SearchPilot website, as I say, I will send out all these links, so they'll be on my Twitter in the thread following the announcement of this live stream. They'll be in the comments section on LinkedIn, and you can get access to those there. Equally, if you go on over to the articles section of our website, you can find the webinar replay, which also has a link to, as well as watching the replay slides and video. You can follow the link over to get to the landing page for part 2. And that is going to be on the 4th of June. So that's in, what, 2 weeks' time, or a week on Tuesday, I think. And you can sign up for that webinar, and you'll get the recording of the first one, as well as the ability to watch live for the second and get the results of that one in the recording as well. In the second one, I think what Sam is going to be teaching us is a lot more about the details of not just the KPIs, but how you actually get better at coming up with good hypotheses, how you improve the measurement of individual tests, and how you can feed that into a loop. So how you can take the good hypotheses that are not only likely to be successful, but they're well-structured hypotheses so that you are learning things as you get these test results. Couple it with the good measurement that includes not only the business level data, so traffic, revenue, but also indicators of why things might be a success. So Search Console data, Googlebot data, those kinds of things. Feed all of that in to understand, feed it back to the hypothesis, understand why things have worked or not worked or gone in the wrong direction, and use that in the iterative testing to come up with even better hypotheses for next time. So that's what you can expect in part 2 of Sam's webinar. So I'd encourage you to sign up to that. As I say, Sam is one of the people who has more experience of this than I think anyone else in the market, having been involved in basically all of our onboarding, setup, and launches of experimentation programs for our customers. When you are doing these things, one of the natural questions that's going to come up is, well, what does good look like? What is a good win rate in particular? So I think test speed, test velocity, test cadence, whatever you want to call it, is a little bit more situational. It depends on your ambition, your budget, your technology stack, how it also depends on your hypotheses. You know, if you're building very complex tests, they're going to take longer to build. But we are seeing organizations run dozens of these tests a quarter, and I think pretty soon, hopefully, we're going to have some ways that you can do some data analysis to figure out how many simultaneous tests you might be able to run and how many tests per quarter you might be able to run on your own website. But this was an interesting quote that we've referred to quite a lot. This is from an article on HBR written by Ron Carvey and Stefan Tompkins. So Stefan is a professor at Harvard Business School, and Ron used to run experimentation at Microsoft, including for all of Bing. And I pulled out this this key quote that only 10 to 20% of experiments generate positive results. I think Ron has talked about this being true across a range of large organizations. Fundamentally, it's hard to move the needle. It's hard to, on these very, very large websites that are already doing extremely well, that have already had a lot of improvements made to them, a lot of hypotheses applied, a lot of good ideas tested. It is really difficult to do better, but obviously it's crucially important. You being asked to generate these business results, and so you have to try. But part of the question is, well, how much better can we do than that? And I wanted to show off maybe some of the work that we've been doing recently at SearchPilot. This is a great example of a multidisciplinary activity where we have taken a combination of engineering resource, data science resource, product team input, and crucially our professional services team, iterating how we help folks build experimentation programs to improve the win rate over time. So the gold section at the top is percentage of positive tests. And you can see that the percent negative has stayed somewhat stable, but we've eaten away at the inconclusive and found been able to build more winning tests. And if we just zoom in, it's a bit more obvious. So this goes from roughly 11%, so at the bottom end of our benchmark range at a few years ago, to currently on track this year to be over 20%, so better than the top end of the benchmark range that we heard about, the 10 to 20% being good in large enterprise. So quite excited about that. The other part is the test cadence, and I've talked recently about some of our innovation that has led us to be able to speed up how many tests that we can run. And it comes not only from the analysis side, where we can more quickly get to statistical confidence that we have a winner or a loser or an inconclusive outcome. It's partly that. So it's partly better test analysis. It's partly a better testing program. So our professional services team being responsible for ensuring that there's a backlog, that we're building tests in parallel with running them, that we have a test basically ready to go as soon as there is a site section freed up and available for running that test. And then the thing I've talked about most recently is tying Googlebot data into this so that we can launch as soon as we launch and end tests sooner if we become confident that enough of the site section has been recrawled by Google since the test was started or ended. So typically this helps end inconclusive tests sooner, because if it's positive, that's good enough. You don't need to know how much it's been recrawled. The statistics spits that out for you. It's useful to know a test is inconclusive despite having been substantially recrawled. So it lets you end inconclusive tests quicker, and it lets you have a shorter, what we call cooldown window in between tests, which is once you've ended a test, either positively and rolled it out to 100% or negatively and turned it off, you want Google to recrawl that site section ideally before you launch the next test onto a random group of pages. And again, by being able to measure the crawl rate, we're able to shorten that time window. So the other chart that I thought was really cool is, this goes back a little bit further, is showing how long we have had to leave tests running before calling them in whatever direction they're going to call over time. And you can see that all of them, negative being the exception, all of them have been on this steady downward trend, and certainly the green line, which is the overall average, has gone from a little under 30 days down to below 20 days in the most recent cohort. And the inconclusive is the steepest drop, which is consistent with what I was just saying about having better data to be able to more quickly call inconclusive tests and be sure they're not going to turn around. And I think the part of the reason that negative tests are typically shorter than other tests is we have this phrase at SearchPilot that I've talked about many times, that we're doing business, not science. And what that can mean a few things. Crucially, it means in this situation, if you're getting a dramatic negative outcome from running a test, the cost of running the test may be too great. So you may say, we don't need to know exactly this is a 12.1% drop. If we're confident this is a drop, then we should just turn it off straight away. And so that's what's happening with the pink line, is we will oftentimes call a negative test quickly, even if it hasn't reached the kind of statistical confidence we might demand in the positive test, just so that we can avoid having the cost of a long-running negative impact. And it's one of the benefits of testing, is that when you get that quick bit of market feedback, you can react to it in real time in a kind of agile way, and you can turn those tests off. So that's why pink is below the others. But just seeing the general downward trend, and in particular the downward trend of the all tests average getting down to whatever that is, 18 days or so, is looking really great. Some of our large websites can run quicker than that, but that is really good. So if you are interested in any of this stuff, the two key resources that I wanted to share today, I mentioned a lot of this is about e-commerce. The reason for that, just an excuse for talking about it again, is that we're just announcing that we're starting working with Marks & Spencer. So if you're on the e-commerce side of retail in general, then we have a page that you can find in our use cases section, retail websites, all dedicated to SEO testing in e-commerce and retail. And the particularly valuable bit that I think, if you're in the SEO team or lead the SEO team, is down the bottom here. We have links to loads of specific SEO test results that are relevant to e-commerce and retail. And so if you head on over here to the retail use cases page, You can get access to all that kind of stuff. And of course, sign up for a walkthrough if you want to see more. So that's the first resource that I wanted to share. The second one is we have this white paper all about experimentation, and this is very closely related to the information that Sam is sharing in these webinars, but in written form. So if you're more of a reader than a watcher, then grab this PDF and you can work through all of this. It's perfect for sharing with wider teams and goes into all of the detail that you might need for building out and improving an SEO experimentation program. So as I say, I'll be sharing all of these links on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you have any questions at all, just reach out to me. My direct messages are open in both places, and my email address is just my first name dot last name at searchpilot.com. Good. Okay, so I hope all of that has been interesting and useful to folks. The thing I wanted to end with today was something totally different. I often like to talk about things that I've been reading, listening to, watching, etc. And the thing I wanted to call out today was this long tweet from a chap called Brian Casey, who I don't think I've met in person, but I've been really enjoying reading his work recently. And you can see Director of Digital at IBM. He is exactly in the space that we're talking about, working with very, very large websites, experienced in a corporate environment where you've got multi-stakeholders and you've got to be good at getting the SEO team to talk to product, tech, engineering, the business, and the wider organization. And he's been looking at this question. So a couple of weeks ago, I talked about how I am still on the hunt for data on search quality from someone other than Google. So if you have this, please do let me know. I talked about how I would really like longitudinal data over time of how satisfied are searchers with Google search results, because we get all this noise from the industry, from the press, from Google itself, obviously giving their side of the story. And it certainly seems that there are some bad vibes at the moment. And this is not the first time. I saw somebody asking on Twitter the other day if there've been this kind of unease and unrest before. And the answer for those veterans who've been around the industry a long time is absolutely yes. I remember I think it would have been around 2010, in the build up to the Panda and Penguin updates, there was a lot of concern that web search was being dominated by scraper websites was the primary controversy, I remember, although thin doorway type pages were also a big concern. But the scrapers were huge. And I remember in particular, Stack Overflow at the time was the rising star that all engineers were amazed by the power of Stack Overflow answers for making a better engineer, better developer. And they were routinely being outranked by any of a couple of dozen scraper sites that you would see all the time. Even if you did exact match searches, even if you did basically search for the title of the question, you'd find these sites ranking that were scraping content. And it happened in our industry as well. It was happening across the board. And it was viewed as somewhat existential at the time. And I think it was very important that Google sorted it, but it was clearly not going to be a Google threat. And I think we're in a kind of similar boat right now. But anyway, so Brian has been talking about his perspective on this, which is from the Webmaster Website Manager side. So he's running IBM.com, which is obviously huge. And he obviously can't exactly measure how happy searchers are with Google. And in particular, people who don't click through to his website, he has no way of telling how happy they were with their search. But for folks who do make it onto their website, they've been doing this really interesting thing, which is where they've collected NPS data across IBM.com at the page level for many years. And he acknowledges there's all kinds of debates about how valuable is NPS data. Is it a good KPI for a website, etc., etc. It's a flawed signal in many ways, but there is value to it. And in particular, he's found that, as he says, you get different information to what you get in web analytics. You don't just get to find the number of people clicking on your stuff. You don't just get to see bounce rates and pages per session and time on site and those kind of things. You can find essentially something that maps to satisfaction. And you can roll it up to a folder level or to a site section level or topic level or whatever, any other slicing and dicing that you want to know. And he said that he's found that this all tends to agree. So, better time on site tends to correlate to more satisfaction, etc. No massive surprises in there. But as he points out, in many cases, the user journey started with search. And if they just Googled your brand or whatever, then they were obviously going to find your website. But more interesting, I think, is when you're competing for unbranded organic traffic. So, as he says, Google artificial intelligence or neural network or whatever, and as he says, these are often the highest NPS experiences on the site. These are the people who are most satisfied with their visit to ibm.com, particularly from search, particularly people who are new visitors who are looking for this informational stuff that is not branded. And maybe that doesn't tell us something. This is not apples to apples. It doesn't tell us that they're actually happier than customers or people who are looking for the brand or whatever, but they are competitive. And what this perhaps starts to tell us is actually less about IBM.com and more about the pair of IBM and the query, or the pair between IBM and Google's decision to rank that page on IBM.com for that query. And you track this over time, and you can see that you're essentially measuring how Google's algorithm is improving. Is Google making its users happier than it used to by sending people to better and better pages? Or when you are more and more the right answer for what that particular user is searching for? And as he says, he's always looked at this data to be the contrast to the hysteria, which I think is a nice way of saying that. And that there are bad things happening right now. There are definitely, I hear many terribly sad stories of small businesses being impacted, but I think at the zoomed out macro level, anecdotes are not data, and there are many areas where Google does have that data to say, are they actually satisfying users better than ever before? And I do still want this data. So if anybody has this aggregated across time over a kind of a long time period, I'd be super interested in seeing it, because I think it's possible that user satisfaction has remained the same, improved, got worse, but only because the web's got worse, not because search itself has got worse, or actually search has got worse, even relative to the quality of the web. I'd love to know answers to some of these things. Some of them are quite hard to disambiguate. But in the meantime, especially if you're running a very large website, I thought this was a really interesting slice of data. So shout out to Brian, as I say, once again, Brian Casey, who is at Brian F. Casey on, I guess we have to call it X these days, is Director of Digital at IBM, and I've been getting a lot of value from the information that he's been putting out. So what I talked about today, if you want to head to searchpilot.com/live, and you can sign up for a demo, you can get customer success stories, introduction to SEO testing, you can get test results and sign up for the email list. You can follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, which is where I go live every week. Probably not next week because the kids are off school, so I'm back a week on Tuesday, I think. And typically around this time, so I'm finishing up now. I started at about 4:15 p.m. UK time, which is 11:15 a.m. on the East Coast, 8:15 a.m. on the West Coast of the US. And I will be tweeting out and adding to the LinkedIn comments on the live stream all of the links of everything I talked about today. So that's a bunch of resources about new customer win, Sam's webinar, and more, as well as the Harvard Business Review case study, and of course what Brian has been talking about. So thank you for joining me again today. My name is Will Critchlow. I run SearchPilot, and we love talking about all these kind of things. I love geeking out about anything to do with SEO testing, but today we've been going that level higher to the experimentation program and how to run that effectively. If you have any questions, do hit me up. You can ask me in public on Twitter or LinkedIn, or my DMs are open in both places, or you can email me and tell me what you'd like to hear about in future. I'm always keen for some inspiration of things that I might like talking about on these weekly live streams. In the meantime, it's a long weekend in the UK, so if you're in the UK, enjoy the sunshine I want to hope for, and everyone else, have a great weekend, and I will see you all on the internet sometime soon. Take care.